News is to the mind what sugar is to the body.
That is a line that really sticks with you, isn't it? So visceral.
It stopped me dead in my tracks. Because, usually when we think about being informed or reading the morning paper, we think of it like eating our vegetables.
Right. It's the responsible thing.
Yeah, it's supposed to be good for you. It makes you a solid, engaged citizen. But today, we are diving into some research that argues the exact opposite.
The complete opposite.
That checking the headlines is actually more like, I don't know, downing a bag of bright, colorful, toxic candy.
And, well, arguably just as damaging to your system, both mentally and physically.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are stripping away the scrolling ticker, the breaking news alerts, and the push notifications to figure out what is actually happening to our brains when we consume news.
We've got a great stack of sources, mostly Avoid News by Rolf Dobelli and Overcoming News Addiction by Steve Pavlina.
And before we get started, I think we should clarify the mission here.
Yeah, this isn't about bashing journalists. And it's definitely not saying that nothing important ever happens in the world.
Right. This is a deep inquiry into our information diet. We're looking at how the modern news cycle affects our biology, our psychology, and, well, our ability to actually get things done.
And that's really the core conflict, isn't it? We feel this intense pressure, this obligation to know what's happening.
But these sources, they argue that this habit is actually making us less knowledgeable, more anxious, and even physically unhealthy. So, okay, let's unpack this. Why is news considered sugar?
To understand that, we have to look at the hardware we're working with. Dobelli makes a point that I think is crucial. He says humans are basically cavemen in suits.
Which explains my posture, honestly. But I assume he means our evolutionary wiring hasn't quite caught up to our technology.
Exactly. I mean, think about the environment our brains were actually designed for. We evolved in these small hunter-gatherer bands, maybe 25 to 100 people, max. So in that setting, if you heard a piece of news, it was directly relevant to your survival.
Right. It would be something like a predator is near, or we found a new food source.
Exactly. Local, actionable information. If you knew it, you could do something about it. It triggered a survival response that had a real purpose.
But now we live in a world that's the complete opposite. We've got a brain designed for a small village, and it's trying to process a global stream of tragedy from, what, 8 billion people.
And that is where the sugar analogy really comes in. Dobelli argues that news feeds us these small, trivial bites. It's easy to digest, it doesn't require deep thinking, and it's stimulating.
You can just swallow limitless quantities of news flashes like gummy bears.
Right, but you never actually feel full.
You just feel sick afterwards. And speaking of feeling sick, let's talk about the biology here. This was the part of the research that I found the most alarming.
Because we ignore the physiology of it.
We do. We think reading the news just happens in our heads, but the sources get into the actual physical body reaction we have to bad news.
It's the limbic system. It's unavoidable. When you see a frightening headline or a shocking image, which is what news is designed to do, right? Grab your attention.
Of course.
Your panic responses kick in. Your body releases glucocorticoids.
Which is basically the scientific term for cortisol, the stress hormone.
Correct. And think about what cortisol is for. It's designed to help you run from a tiger. It prepares your body for intense physical exertion.
It dumps sugar into your bloodstream, shuts down anything that's non-essential.
Exactly. But when you're reading the news, you're just sitting on the subway or at your desk. You aren't running anywhere.
So all that stress chemistry is just marinating in your system.
Precisely. If you check the news constantly, you're putting your body into a state of chronic stress. It deregulates your immune system, impairs digestion, inhibits growth hormones.
You are physically putting yourself in fight or flight mode for events happening thousands of miles away.
Events that, and this is the key, you cannot influence.
That's the part that gets me.
So we're voluntarily poisoning ourselves for zero strategic gain. And that's just the biological side. The psychological impact is maybe even trickier. It completely distorts how we see reality.
Okay, so this brings us to the concept of the risk map. I found this part so fascinating because I am definitely guilty of this. Dobelli uses this analogy of a car driving off a collapsed bridge.
It's a perfect example. So imagine a bridge collapses. A car falls into the river. The media descends. What do they focus on?
Well, they focus on the drama. Who was the driver? Where was he going? What kind of car was it?
Yes.
Was there a dog in the back seat?
Yes, exactly. They interview the crying relatives. They play the sad music. They focus on the specific, the flashy, the emotional, the new.
But as a society, or even just as a person trying to navigate the world, what's the relevant information in that story?
The structural stability of the bridge.
Right. Why did it fall? Was it rust? Bad concrete?
Precisely. The relevant fact is that the bridge design might be weak, which implies a risk for other bridges. But the news focuses on the car.
And because we consume so much of this drama-focused content, we walk around with a completely wrong risk map in our heads.
We do. We drastically overrate risks like terrorism or plane crashes or shark attacks.
Because they're highly visible, they make for good TV, they have a narrative.
But we underrate the slow, creeping things, chronic stress, antibiotic resistance, the slow decline of infrastructure.
Because those are slow and invisible and complex. They aren't breaking news, so we ignore them.
Right. Dobelli puts it so bluntly. Terrorism is overrated, but fiscal irresponsibility, which could actually ruin your life, is underrated.
And Steve Pavlina adds another layer to this. He just calls news marketing.
It's a cynical but pretty sharp insight. He argues that news is marketing based on fear. The formula is pump me full of fear, then sell me the cure.
Huh. The world is ending. But first, a message from a pharmaceutical company and a home security system.
Exactly. If you're afraid you're a better consumer, you buy things to feel safe. And this constant fear-based narrative, it feeds into cognitive errors like confirmation bias and story bias.
Okay, let's unpack story bias. I think most of us know confirmation bias. We just look for info that proves we're already right. But story bias feels specific to news.
It is. Our brains crave a narrative. We're pattern-seeking machines. We need things to make sense. So let's say the stock market drops 2% today. That's a fact.
But we need a reason. We can't handle the randomness.
So the news anchor says the market dropped because of fears about the euro, or the market rallied on tech optimism.
Right. But is that actually true?
We don't know. The market is a complex, chaotic system. There isn't one reason. But the market moved because of X is a story. It's neat, it's tidy. Dobelli calls it cheap explanation.
It makes you realize how much of what we think we know is just a story someone invented to explain a random event. But okay, here's where the rubber meets the road. Dobelli issues a challenge, and I want to issue it to you, the listener, right now.
I love this test. It's brutal.
It really is. Here's the challenge. Name one news piece from the last year, just one, that helped you make a better decision about your life, your career, or your business. That silence is loud, isn't it?
It's silence for most people.
I tried this myself. I scrolled back through my memory. I read thousands of headlines. I know about political scandals, celebrity breakups, disasters in countries I'll never visit. But did any of it change a single decision I made? No.
And that's the definition of irrelevance. If you consumed 10,000 bits of info and not one of them altered your life path, what was the utility? And then you have to look at the cost.
The math on this is depressing. Pavlina breaks it down. He says, let's just assume you spend 10 minutes a day checking the news.
Which, let's be honest, is a very, very conservative estimate.
Oh, for sure. But even at just 10 minutes a day, that's 61 hours a year. That's a week and a half of full-time work.
God.
And if you're a 30-minute-a-day person, which is probably closer to average.
That is a full work month every single year.
Yep.
You are working 1 month a year just to process headlines you'll forget by next week. Imagine what else you could do with that month.
Just evaporating into the ether. And Dobelli takes this calculation to a global scale, and it's staggering. He uses the Mumbai terror attacks as an example.
Yeah, this is a heavy calculation, but it's important. So about 200 people tragically lost their lives in those attacks. But Dobelli asks us to imagine that 1 billion people watched the coverage for an average of just 1 hour.
That's 1 billion hours of human attention.
Which, if you convert that to lifespans, is roughly 2,000 entire human lifetimes. So in terms of sheer time destroyed, the news coverage consumed far more human life potential than the attack itself.
And what do we get for that investment of time and attention? We get what the authors call the illusion of caring.
This is the global village myth. We watch a disaster unfold, we feel sad, we tweet something. We feel like good people because we're witnessing the pain.
But the hard question is, does our watching actually help anyone?
No, we aren't doing anything. We're just consuming their tragedy as content. And Dobelli argues that this leads to something called learned helplessness.
That's a specific psychological term, right?
Yes. It's when you're repeatedly exposed to a negative situation you can't control. Eventually, you stop trying. You become passive. And that's what the news does. It grinds us down.
It hits home. It feels like we're just spectators to the apocalypse. But here's the question. If it's so bad for us, why is it so hard to stop? I try to quit, and my thumb just automatically goes to the news app.
Because it's not just a habit, it is an addiction.
We're hooked.
Literally, there's neuroscience behind this. The brain has these dopamine reward circuits. We want to know what happens next. It's called long-term potentiation. And the really scary part is that news physically changes the structure of your brain.
How so? It's damaging our ability to think.
It weakens your ability to concentrate. We're training our neural circuits for skimming, for multitasking, for processing tiny little fragments of information. We're literally losing the pathways required for deep reading.
Dobelli has this poetic but kind of sad metaphor for it. He says news pieces are like wind hitting your cheek.
Yes, it brushes past you, it's distracting, but it leaves no trace. You can't build a body of knowledge on news. It's just pebbles. You can't build a house out of pebbles. You need bricks.
And Pavlina proved this addiction theory with his own experiment. He did a 30-day news fast, and he said the first few days were surprisingly brutal.
He was itching to check. He realized it wasn't that he needed the information, he needed the fix. He had to delete his bookmarks to stop his subconscious from just clicking on them.
I think we all have that fear, though, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. The common objection is, well, what if a war starts? What if something huge happens and I don't know?
That's the #1 fear. But both authors address this so well. Pavlina tells the story of the Northridge earthquake in 1994. He didn't need CNN to tell him there was an earthquake.
The ground shaking was a pretty good clue, I guess.
Exactly. Reality has a way of announcing itself. But for things that aren't physical disasters, there's Dobelli's rule. If something is truly important, your friends or family will tell you.
That's actually a great point. If a major scandal breaks or a war starts, someone is going to mention it at lunch. You won't be the last to know.
And the benefit is you get that news with metadata. You get it from a person who knows you, knows your priorities, and can add context.
You're not just getting the raw, panic-inducing feed. You're getting the filtered, relevant version.
Exactly.
So let's pivot to the practical side. We've established it's toxic sugar. It ruins our focus. We don't need it to survive. What is the solution? Is it just moderation?
Well, neither of our experts believes in moderation here. Because of the addictive nature of it, the dopamine loops, they both suggest the cold turkey method.
Total abstinence.
Total.
Yeah.
Delete the apps, block the websites, sell the TV. Okay, maybe that's a bit extreme, but cancel the subscriptions. Make it as inaccessible as possible.
Because willpower isn't enough.
Not against an algorithm designed to hook you,
Well,
but you can't just remove something addictive without replacing it, right? You have to fill that void.
absolutely, the substitution strategy.
You have to find something else to ground you. For Pavlina, it was nature.
I love this detail. He went to Sedona and Red Rock Canyon during his detox, and he found this heart-shaped rock.
And it sounds a bit, I don't know, woo-woo, but think about the contrast. The news is olds. It's stale by tomorrow. Nature is timeless. That rock became his symbol of a reality that doesn't change every 5 minutes.
And Dobelli's substitute is a bit more intellectual. He suggests replacing news with deep reading.
Right. Instead of reading 50 headlines, read one book. Read long-form journalism in, say, The New Yorker or The Atlantic. Read specialized journals.
But play devil's advocate for a second. What's the real difference? Aren't you still just consuming information?
The difference is depth and process. News give you a dot. Deep reading connects the dots. It explains how the world works, not just what just happened. You come away with understanding, not just data.
Okay, but I know there's a listener right now panicking, thinking, I can't go 100% dark. My job requires me to know things. Dobelli does offer a tiny cheat code.
The cheating option, yes. If you absolutely must, he suggests glancing at the summary page of The Economist, or similar weekly, once a week, for no more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes a week? That's it. It catches you up on the macro events without drowning you in the daily noise. That is a drastic reduction from 60 hours a year. It creates so much space. Space for thinking, for creating, for actually living your life instead of just observing it. So if we step back, this is really about redefining what it means to be a good citizen.
It is. We have to stop confusing consuming news with being involved.
That's a huge shift in mindset.
It really is. We think sitting on the couch watching a disaster makes us good people.
Yeah.
It doesn't. A good citizen is someone who is mentally healthy, focused, and actually solving problems in their local community.
And you can't do that if you're paralyzed by global anxiety.
Exactly. Be the person who helps a neighbor, not the person who knows the death toll in a landslide on the other side of the planet but ignores their own family. Before we wrap up, I want to leave the listener with Steve Pavlina's final contingency plan. Because I know some of you are still thinking, but what if the world ends and I'm out hiking, looking for heart-shaped rocks?
Ah, yes, the global evacuation contingency.
Pavlina says, if everyone else decides to leave the planet, please just send him a quick, courtesy email.
That's all he asks, just a heads up.
Otherwise, he's going to be perfectly happy enjoying the silence.
And honestly, looking at the news feed today, that sounds like a pretty good way to live.
So here's our challenge to you. Try it. Just for 30 days. See what happens to your anxiety, your time, and your brain when you unplug from the feed.
You might find you haven't missed anything at all, but you've gained everything back.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.